you just learned a lot of new things about Bootstrap in order to complete this project. But how would someone who already knows Bootstrap approach our same problem? Let's ask Jacques and find out. To continue our series of throwing random things at him to get his attention, let's throw this ginormous penguin.
So we're going to actually take this design and go through it with Bootstrap and turn it into at least a first pass with HTML and CSS. OK, so here's an image that we've been given by a designer. And I'm just going to go through the process that I go through when I take something like this and turn it into a web page. I'm going to be using Bootstrap, and I have a lot of working knowledge of Bootstrap. So when I use classes from Bootstrap, don't worry if you don't know them off the top of your head. I use them almost every day, so they're right there for me. But you can go look at the documentation for Bootstrap. It is very complete, and they have all kinds of demos and things like that that you can really dive into. So if there's something you want to do and you want to see if Bootstrap does it, go check out those documents. All right, so basically everything on the web is in boxes at the moment. So we start with the biggest box, that's our browser, the whole page here, and we'll work down from there. If I'm looking at a design like this, I'm going to start picking out those boxes. And so the first one would be this top area here with the logo and the name. There's an HR, a horizontal rule that cuts through everything here. We have this center area with the main image. And then we've got a box down here that has the featured work and then sort of the contents of that. And so that'll be my first cut. And when I'm looking at that, I'm also seeing in this, for instance, in this featured work area, there are three boxes, three sets of content. They're all identical, and I'll probably just be splitting that whole row up into these three columns. Same with the top here, where we have a box that the logo's in and a box that the name is in. So I go through it and I look at it first. It's really helpful to work through the image in your head first and sort of understand where your boxes are. It'll make coding it up a lot easier. Okay, so jumping into the code here, this is sort of just my jumping off point. This is mostly just boilerplate. I'll walk through it really quickly here. We're basically just telling the browser that yes, we're HTML. We're setting our doc type. We're saying the language, in this case, is English. We're setting our character set here. That basically just makes sure that the browser is displaying the characters in the way that I intend it to. The next meta tag down here is just telling Internet Explorer, use the best engine you've got. Give the user the most up-to-date experience. The meta tag here is for mobile, and what we're saying is just sort of how to display the page initially when it loads. There's a title tag. You should always name your pages. We'll call this the puppy portfolio. The thing below that is actually us bringing Bootstrap into this page. And that's pretty much it for the head of our document. The body is where we're going to start putting in the page itself. So when we start out with Bootstrap, we're going to put everything inside of the Bootstrap's container. And then going back to our mock here, we'll just start with this top section. So I'm going to make a row with the logo and the name in it. Now I'm going to just split this right down the middle. We might decide to do it a little off center or something like that, but for right now, I'm just going to cut it down the middle. Everything in Bootstrap is done in 12 columns, so the whole width is divided up into 12 different columns. And so we'll start out splitting it in half, 6 for each. So we'll drop in our logo here. In images, it'll be logo.png. Always make sure you set alt text. Alt text allows people to see and understand your website when maybe the image didn't load, or if they're visually impaired, their screen reader will read the contents of this instead of obviously being able to display that image to them. All right, so here we're going to put in the name, this whole area over here, this Jane Doe, and her subtitle. And I'm just going to put these in heading tags right now. The H1 in general is the most important thing, the title, the largest piece, the largest heading on the website, and then go down from there. So now if we go over to our page, we have our logo and we have our name, but you'll notice that the name we're not really looking a whole lot like our mock at the moment. The mock is right aligned and capitalized, and here we are left aligned and normally capitalized. And so if we apply a style to this MD6 div here, the container of that name, of the name and the subtitle, we're actually going to apply those styles across everything. Now, Bootstrap has some nice built-in methods, text right and text uppercase. And those will pull all of the text to the right side, and those will set the text to all be uppercase. And again, don't expect to know all of these going out the gate. Bootstrap's documentation is really good about this, and if you're browsing through there, you'll just pick up things every time you look at it. So now refreshing our page, there we go. Now our text is on the right, everything's capitalized, and we'll move on from there. So the next thing I'm looking at in the mock is this horizontal rule, and we'll drop that in next. All right, so you'll notice that the horizontal rule for Bootstrap is very thin. We can come back and address that later. Right now, we're just going to go through with just the vanilla capabilities of Bootstrap, and we'll worry about fine-tuning and doing all that kind of stuff later. So going back to our mock, the next thing up is this big sort of central image here. So that'll be taking up all 12 columns, and we'll drop that in. So the source of our images will be in images. So now if we go to our page, there's a puppy. One of the things that you'll notice is that it's actually coming off the edge of the screen here. It's actually overflowing its container. And so we can go and we can use a Bootstrap class, responsive, which will make sure that that image pulls itself in to fit inside of its parent container. So the 12 columns, this image now fits inside of it. So there's our first puppy. Now the puppies are starting to make sense. Let's go back to our mock. The next section we're going to work on here is just this featured work. So we'll consider featured work to be its own 12 columns wide, and then we'll have each one of these sort of featured work elements be their own 4 columns wide each, call 4s each. And we'll just split it up, and we're going to just work through it top to bottom. Featured work is sort of the second most important title on our page. It's a section heading here, so we're going to use an H2. You can flip back and forth in between your browser and your coding environment to make sure that, sort of just sanity check along the way. When we have repeated elements like this, we can actually just code them up once and copy and paste that in this case, a couple X more times, and then update the elements within it. It'll save us a little bit of typing and a little bit of time. All right, so there's our puppy, there's our title. So let's add, again, that image responsive. We'll just make sure that that puppy stays inside of his little container here. So now we've got one of them. We can just copy paste over a few more times and then modify those, and we should be coming up close to what our mock looks like. So let's go grab that text, and we'll just do some updates here. Now I'm copying and pasting to save myself a little bit of time typing, but make sure when you copy paste that you actually are updating everything that you need to update. It's very easy to introduce errors when you're copying and pasting because you might not see one of the minor differences. So maybe it's not changing this image source or not changing the alt text. Just go through and make sure that you're really thorough when you copy paste. It's a shortcut, but make sure you don't take it too casually. All right. So there are our featured work.